Oh, look at that. G'day everyone, Matt Elder of Family Bricks here, and today we're going to look at adding this Briksmax Lighting LED Kit to this Fast and Furious, Too Furious Nissan Skyline GTR Set number 76917. We will unbox the light kit and see what is included in it. From there, we have a time-lapse speed build of installing the light kit and an overview of the lights in the kit. From here, we talk about the peculiarities of the battery box and suggestions as to how this could be improved. We'll look at some of the details of the wires and finish off giving our thoughts as to whether the light kit is worth it. This kit has been provided by the manufacturer, but opinions expressed are our own. You'll find a link around the video to where this can be purchased from. This video is brought to you by McCatsim Holiday Homes in Margate and Broadstairs. Great for a week's holiday or a weekend escape, being just over an hour east of London, UK. Treat yourself to amazing sunsets, a Lego wall, or great food. Visit www.macatsim.com and mention this YouTube video and we'll look after you. Okay, so here's the box, and it's a pretty sort of standard generic Briksmax box with the sticker for the actual set. Let's see what's inside. It actually had in a lot more than what I thought. You've got all the different lights in the different bags, plus the usual battery box, USB adapter, generic user guide, generic customer service, and then the actual instructions themselves. So the instructions, unfortunately, my usual sort of complaint with these things, because they're bigger than the box, they always get bent and it's got a bit of a curl to it. This is probably not as bad as normal, just means I have to flatten that out. Having a look through, it seems to be usual sort of thing. Just take the car apart all the different ways, put the lights in. Really curious where the battery box is going to end up in all of this. Yeah, it does actually look a lot more detailed and complicated than what I initially thought, which is a good thing. Probably means there's a lot more lights in there and be a really good kit and light up the car really well when it's done, which for one of these Fast and Furious cars, certainly tricking it out makes it make sense. You start by taking the front part of the car apart and you're taking off the little cheese wedges to actually put the lights in for the front. So there's 4 of those little lights which then all feed underneath the car, and it can be a little bit fiddly, and as with all of these, I always recommend having a pair of tweezers. It really helps just guide and get them in the right places. Next up, you're taking apart a fair amount of the middle part of the car in terms of also the sides and the seats and the rear wheels. You start feeding through the lights, through the base of it there, in through the middle, and then feeding the connectors into the back space area. You then put some of the car interior back in, which I struggled with because I missed over putting the 1x2 translucent pieces in there, so you really got to pay attention to what you're taking apart. Moving to the rear tail lights, and again, you're taking apart a good chunk of the back of the car to get in, and you're going to have 4 lights going in there, all getting wired, and again, the wires are going to be going back down and under the car. Just a lot of wires to be threading down, and then making sure you're putting the plates back on top and really holding them in place along with the rear axle piece. You put in the main light board for the underside of the car, and then you start running all the rear light wires up just in front of that rear wheel well. You start rebuilding part of the car, tidying up some of the wires and just making sure they're going where exactly you want them to go, and then adding in the main interior light onto the actual roof piece itself. Now we start to take all the individual light wires and connect them together on a board. Well, there's actually 2 boards. So going through and just planning it out and trying to get the shortest ones in so that you can connect that further down, and then some of the longer ones up onto the secondary board. Then peel off the bit of tape so you can have the adhesive and stick it in so it sits nice and comfortably where it needs to, and then finishing off with a few of the other little details. Oh, look at that. That's really nice. So a quick overview, we can see we've got the front headlights, we've got an interior light to the car, you got some lights underneath, and then on the rear, I think is probably one of my more favorite ones, 2 rear round lights on each side. This is giving a little bit more blowout and flare than what we'd actually be seeing in real life, but gives you some sort of idea. The challenge with cars and light kits are always going to be the battery box, and this is somewhat curious as to why they've done it this way. They've actually fed the connecting USB cable out the side of the window here, So you need to think about, if you're going to display this, what side you want to be displaying it from. If you want that side, obviously, you know, the battery box is on the other side. The thing I don't understand with this is why, given that you've got all the other wires coming down through gaps in here, you wouldn't do the same thing. Because then, if at least if this USB is coming out here, you then have the flexibility to run it, you know, off to the back or the side or something like that. So I'm not quite sure what the rationale is for doing it like that. I guess as with anything, if you're displaying these, if you have them built up on some sort of mount or something, you can always hide the battery boxes underneath. In an ideal world, you'd have a little tiny battery box somehow connected in there, which, given the LEDs are all low powered and everything, I would have thought you would be able to come up with some way of getting a much smaller battery box, and whether or not you can use like a watch battery or something of that sort of ilk, or maybe it's just too expensive and these are more generic off-the-shelf components. But that would be the one thing with this, is that you're gonna have to figure out what you're doing with your battery box. At least with other buildings and things, you've got a chance to hide them away, or it doesn't impact upon them as much. But you know, if you're moving this around, obviously you've only got a certain length before that pulls, and you'd have to think about it. So it's definitely going to take it from being potentially a toy and playing around with it to anchoring it down or being more of a display piece. Not a huge issue, but something to have a bit of a think about. Otherwise, you can tuck the wires in quite nicely and tautly on the underside. There are a few places where it just doesn't feel like in here. You got pizza corner piece sticking up a little bit because you can't really tighten that all the way in, to a lesser extent with the lights themselves. So again, just another little thing to be conscious of. So is the light kit for the car worth it? When you put it in context, the car itself we can usually get for about £18, maybe 15, 14 when on sale. And in the US, it's probably about $20 or so. But the light kit itself was £32, give or take a discount. You might get down to £26, £27. So light kits are actually more than the cost of the car. So inevitably, it brings up a question of, would you get light kits for cars? I think if you're getting into light kits anyhow, you're going for a certain look and effect, and it does look great. But if you've got a lot of these Speed Champions cars and you want to light them all up, it's going to get expensive very quickly. That said, the number of lights and different components and everything which goes into this really did surprise me. And you can kind of get a bit of an understanding as to why the cost is what it is, because you do have, you know, the 4 lights at the front and back, the one underneath, the one interior, battery box, boards, all the rest of it. As with anything, it's probably a fair price. We'd probably want it cheaper, but that's just the way the world is and prices in 2023. Thanks very much for watching, and if you leave the word MAX in the comments, we'll know you've watched this far. If you've enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up button and consider subscribing to the channel, and a share never goes astray. Here are some other lighting videos you might be interested in. Alternatively, here are some other videos you might also like to watch. That's it from us here at Family Bricks. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.